ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، قال الإمام زين العابدين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: رحم الله عمي العباس، لقد آثر وفدى وواسى أخاه بنفسه، فأعطاه الله جناحين عوض يديه كما صنع لعمه جعفر بن أبي طالب. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Jafar ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is regarded by many as one of the greatest companions of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And indeed is revered as one of the greatest martyrs in Islamic history. A martyr from whose life many fantastic lessons may be learnt and many important examples may be derived. And a martyr whose life requires a thorough analysis, for indeed he is seen as being one of the pillars of the origin of the religion of Islam. When you dissect the biography of Jafar ibn Abi Talib, you find that he is revered by many as the martyr who helped ensure the religion of Islam remained a religion of strength, not just in Arabia but outside of Arabia. Indeed, if you were to give the title Sayyid al-Shuhada to any person in Islamic history, there are three who normally deserve it. Either Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, or Sayyid al-Shuhada to Hamza, or the third one is Jafar ibn Abi Talib. And indeed you find this Jafar ibn Abi Talib's legacy remained a legacy even after he had died. That for many years after he had died, you found many years later in Karbala and in Sham, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt remind the Muslims of his position. You notice, for example, Imam al-Husayn, when he comes out on the battlefield in his final moments, his final stand, he comes out and he states, "O people, do you not know who I am? Is Fatima al-Zahra not my mother? Is Ali ibn Abi Talib not my father? Is Rasulullah not my grandfather? Is Hamza not my father's uncle? Is Ja'far al-Tayyar not my uncle?" In other words, even at Karbala, of all the names, Imam al-Husayn decides to remind the opposition of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib is one of the names. Because he knows the opposition, all of them know about Ja'far's exploits in early Islam. Likewise, you find our fourth Imam in the court of Yazid in Sham. When he stands in front of Yazid, he says to him, "O Yazid, Allah has granted us 6 and given us excellence in 7. Allah has granted us knowledge, patience, eloquence, generosity, the believers' love and affection for us. And He has given us excellence in 7. in that from us is the Holy Prophet. From us is Ali, the Lion of Allah. From us is Hassan and Husayn. From us is Hamza, and from us is Jafar. Therefore you find that Jafar ibn Abi Talib from Karbala in Sham, years after he had died as a shaheed, was still being remembered for his martyrdom. Unfortunately, however, there is very little in the English language on the biography of Jafar. You find even in the Arabic language, you are hard-pressed to find books on the biography of this great personality. This personality who was a fulcrum in early Islam. And indeed, you find there is therefore a need for us to begin writing books which cover the lives of personalities like Jafar. Because many times the school of Ahlul Bayt is accused as being a school which does not respect the Sahaba of Rasulullah. Many times we are told that you don't give the special place which the Sahaba deserve. On the contrary, we adore Sahaba like Jafar ibn Abi Talib. Because to us, Jafar ibn Abi Talib is a man of war, a man of spirituality, a man of ethics. If you want to understand the warriorship in a battlefield, look no further than Jafar. If you want to understand what it means to migrate to ensure Islam spreads, go to Jafar. If you want to know the meaning of being generous, go to Jafar. In the eyes of many, Jafar ibn Abi Talib is the embodiment of passion, bravery, dedication and generosity. That amongst his title is what? He has the title Abul Masakin, the father of the needy. Therefore, let's dissect the biography of this great man in the following stages. Number one, what was his relationship with the Holy Prophet? Number two, how did he ensure Islam spread into Africa? And what was the famous conversation he had in Africa? Number three, which battle did Rasulullah return from where he remembered Jafar even though Jafar's brother was victorious in that battle? Number four, how did Jafar die? And what's the relationship between the death of Jafar and the death of Abu Fadl al-Abbas? Let's dissect this and dissect his biography in complete depth. As you could tell from his title, he is Jafar, son of Abu Talib. As we mentioned, Abu Talib had 4 sons. The eldest of the sons of Abu Talib, there is very little information about in the books of history. As in, many people always ask me, is there anything about Talib? As in, we hear about Aqil, we hear about Jafar, but is there anything about Talib? There are very few narrations which mention Talib. Talib, of the narrations, there is a mention that Talib died at the age of 55, that he was forced to go and fight on the army of Abu Jahl against the army of Rasulullah, but that on the way he escaped. On the way towards the battle of Badr, he escaped because he didn't want to face the consequence of having to fight the Holy Prophet. You see, number one, the Holy Prophet was his cousin. Number two, Talib was like his uncle Abbas. Both of them believed in the Prophet, but they couldn't come out publicly with their belief. Therefore, Talib managed to escape from the battle of Badr, and the narrations say to us that he was a man of dignity and respect who died at the age of 55. Aqil, the next brother, died at the age of 90. The oldest of the sons of Abu Talib. He lived until the age of 90. And of course, his famous son is Muslim. Then you have Jafar. Jafar ibn Abi Talib, the first of the merits he has is that nobody resembled Abu Talib in the way he looked like Jafar. Many people used to say, if you want to look at Abu Talib, look at Jafar al-Tayyar. When you see his face, you'll remember the face of Abu Talib. That, you know, sometimes you hear Ali al-Akbar looked like his grandfather, for example. Jafar ibn Abu Talib was a photocopy of his father. And you find that Jafar ibn Abu Talib, what many people do not realize, Rasulullah loved him so much that it was Rasulullah who brought up Jafar. Many times we assume that the Holy Prophet brought up Imam Ali. But Jafar is 10 years older than Imam Ali, and therefore when Rasulullah was 20, Jafar was born. Rasulullah was always at the house of his uncle Abu Talib, also at the house of Fatima bint Asad. So when Jafar was born, the Holy Prophet would go, he'd bring him up, he'd play with him like you would play with the children, And that's why you find Jafar himself saying, I never saw a relationship in my life like the relationship of the Holy Prophet with my father Abu Talib. Honestly, it is sad that until today, in certain books of history, they write down Abu Talib the Kafir, even though he gave so much to the religion. Jafar says, I never saw anyone who had a closer relationship to the Holy Prophet like my uncle. He said, I was 5 years old, and I remember until today my father telling the Holy Prophet, oh Muhammad, are you ready to get married? And I said to him, oh my father, of course. And he said to him, oh my uncle, of course I'm ready. Then he said, then we will accept what Khadija wants and we will marry Khadija. He said, I remember the delight on the face of Rasulullah on that day, and I was only a 5-year-old. And I remember seeing my father recite the nikah of Rasulullah with Khadija. As it's very ironic, you'll find Muslims today saying kafir, 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 kafir. The Holy Prophet seemingly had no one better to pick in his life except a kafir to recite his nikah. You'll find a fickle Muslim, a normal Muslim in the world today will say, Maulana Sahib, if you don't mind, I never come to the mosque the whole year and you probably don't know who I am, but I beg you, just recite nikah for me. But you'll find that Abu Talib, who Rasulullah knew inside out, Rasulullah said, I want you to recite the nikah. And someone says, well yes, but he was only 25 at the time, he still wasn't a prophet of God. Believe me, if Jesus can speak from the cradle and announce his prophethood, then Muhammad was definitely a prophet years before 40. So therefore Rasulullah knew who to pick. He picked Abu Talib, and Abu Talib from his nikah. I ask anyone to go and read the nikah of Rasulullah with Khadija, how Abu Talib recites, in the name of the Lord of Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael. As in that really shows that there is a staunch belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And without a doubt, in our belief, one of the opinions is that Abu Talib is the last of the awsiya of Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. Prophet Jesus, of his disciples, of his successors, the last of them is Abu Talib according to our sixth Imam. Therefore you found that the Holy Prophet brought up Jafar. And what do you expect from a young man brought up by the Holy Prophet except that he is of sublime morality, isn't it? That's why Imam al-Baqir salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam al-Baqir has an unbelievable narration about Jafar. He says that the Holy Prophet says, Allah has ordered me to love Jafar ibn Abi Talib because of 4 things he has in his youth which no one in Arabia could share. No one could come near. What are they? He says 4 things in his youth which in the days of Jahiliyyah everyone was doing but not him. What are they? He said, number 1, and this he even told to Jafar. He says that Rasulullah told Jafar, oh Jafar, Allah loves you for 4 things. He said to him, what are they, Ya Rasulullah? He said the first is that in the days of Jahiliyyah you never lied. Number 2, that you never committed adultery in the days of Jahiliyyah. Number 3, that you never in your life drank alcohol in the days of Jahiliyyah. Number 4, that you never worshipped idols in the days of Jahiliyyah. While the peer pressure was ferocious, none of these 4 affected you. Because you know, idolatry or adultery or lying or alcohol, in many cases, peer pressure affects you to doing one of them, isn't it? And I mean each one of them. Idol worshipping, you could have the peer pressure that everybody in your temple is worshipping an idol. You can look at that idol and you're thinking, why am I bowing down before a piece of wood? But then again, I'll be excommunicated if I question. So the peer pressure means that you end up bowing. Number 2, drinking alcohol. If you ask many of the youths who drank alcohol in their youth, if you ask them why, they said, well, I was the odd one out, as in everyone's ordering, and I'm the odd one who's ordering, you know, something like Coke or Red Bull or some nonsense like this. You'll find why, because I'm trying to fit in. That's why when someone says, what's wrong with us going to the club? I'm not going to do anything haram in the nightclub. I'm only going for my friend's birthday. Yes, of course. At the beginning, you're not drinking or anything. But slowly but surely, the peer pressure will dictate that, listen, have a sip. As in the Quran says that its advantages outweigh, its disadvantages outweigh the advantages. So there are advantages. Drink. Subhanallah, you'll find even there's peer pressure in Muslim countries. Why do I blame the non-Muslim? In Muslim countries today, there is peer pressure where the higher class of society, I don't know about higher class, but those of you who do, the higher class of society, they are those who enjoy, a sip of whiskey, because a sip of whiskey is good for the heart. That's the reason you drink it. So you find that there's that peer pressure as well. And if you want, you go to certain countries in the world today. Go to Pakistan. In Pakistan, the high life in some cities is that you have alcohol at the wedding. MashaAllah. So you have that. That's on the second level. On the third level, what do you have? On the third level, lying. Lying may be a peer pressure. You want to fit into a crowd, you start lying about your life, isn't it? You start making up stories about who your parents are, about what you can do, and so on. And number 4, adultery. Everyone in your friend circle has committed an act, you haven't. Everyone in your friend circle has enjoyed an act, you haven't. So your friend circle start telling you, listen, what's wrong with you? Why don't you commit these things? And these were 4 savage things in Arabian Jahiliyyah. Rasulullah tells Jafar, Allah has ordered me to love you because of these 4 things. Now Jafar replies with something stunning. He says to me, Ya Rasulullah, shall I tell you why I never drank? Shall I tell you why I never committed adultery? Shall I tell you why I didn't worship idols? Shall I tell you why I didn't lie? You see, sometimes we don't do these things, not because we believe they're wrong. We don't do them because we know we'll get a smack round the head if the community finds out. Rationally, as Muslims, we have missed the point of this religion. When the religion tells you something's prohibited, it's not because God wants you to live a boring life. It's because that which is prohibited, if you start acting it, will bring ill discipline into your life. Jafar looked at him and said, Ya Rasulullah, do you know why I never lied? Because lying shows a person lacks masculinity and bravery. A man of truth tells you as it is in your face and he's not scared. I never lied because a liar is someone who lacks in his masculinity and his bravery. Then he said to him, so why didn't you commit adultery? He replied, I never committed adultery because I feared it will one day haunt my family. What a line. You think committing adultery doesn't come back to harm you? I'll come back and burn you. It doesn't come back just to burn you, it can burn others in your family. A person thinks he can get away with a relationship extramarital. Watch it come out one day on your family and then see what happens. Jafar says, Ya Rasulullah, number 1, I didn't do that because of the lying, lessening the masculinity. Number 2, the adultery. Number 3, with the alcohol. He said, I never drank alcohol because nothing inhibits your rational faculties like drinking alcohol. From that time, nothing inhibits your rational faculty. Sometimes a non-Muslim says to you, you Muslims are so boring. On a night out, none of you drink. I asked the non-Muslim, at the end of that night out, do you actually remember what happened or no? He'll look at you and he'll be like, you know what, to tell you the truth, the whole fun of it was I don't remember what happened. Subhanallah. This logic sometimes, a person has to look in the mirror and think, what am I doing? As in, it's enjoyable for me not to remember the night. So you find, he says, if anything's going to inhibit our rational faculties, it's drinking alcohol. How many young children lost their lives because of drunk drivers? How many young children lost their future because of abuse from alcoholics? Isn't it? As in, Islam is according to your nature. It's telling you that this will destroy your society. Then he said to him, number 4, why didn't you worship an idol? He said, why should I worship that which neither benefits me nor harms me? Isn't it? At the end of the day, why don't we worship idols in Islam? It's because I'm looking at that idol, I'm thinking, hold on a minute, what's it going to do for me? It's not going to benefit me or harm me. Therefore, Jafar, from a young age, his understanding of halal and haram was not that I fear the stick at home. His understanding was everything in this religion has a logic. Every law has a philosophy. And these 4 all have their philosophies as well. And that's why you find that Jafar ibn Abi Talib from that young age was part of the triumvirate with Rasulullah. That Abu Talib himself narrates, a man looked at me and he said, Oh Abu Talib, who are those 3 who are praying? He said that is Muhammad and my son Ali, and next to him Khadija, and I want my Jafar to complete the wings of the bird of Muhammad. From that young age. Therefore you find Rasulullah, Jafar was to one side, Ali was to other. You found that he dedicated everything to the Prophet. And in those early years when the Prophet had to announce that he's a prophet, do you know how much struggle these early Sahaba faced? As in, imagine one day Muhammad is a good man. He was an orphan, we like his family. But when Muhammad dares to announce he's a prophet and takes away from the business of idol worship, then we're going to attack him and attack his followers. If you mark my words, I say the business of idol worship. Someone says it's not the business, it's a religion. Idol worship is always originally a business. It's a way you subjugate the lower class of a society, and in other ways they come as pilgrims and you take their money from the amount of pilgrimage they make to that idol. That's why there's no way Abu Sufyan worshipped a god, and there's no way Abu Sufyan worshipped anything. Abu Sufyan, what was he at the end? Abu Sufyan is a loan shark. You come from Yemen to worship an idol. At the end you have no money. He tells you, listen, if you want any money from my side, I'll lend you the money, but there's interest on top of what I'm going to lend you. Abu Sufyan and Abu Jahl launched a vicious war on the Holy Prophet. You found Ammar being tortured, his mother Sumayya killed, his father Yasser killed, Bilal al-Habashi under intense torture in the heat of Mecca, the rocks being placed on his body in the darkness of the night. This severe torture, the Prophet had to make a decision, because the religion of Islam was under severe threat, as in there was only this many of them. If there's this many of them, how are they going to ensure that the religion survives? So what did the Prophet do? This is where a visionary has to speak. A man who's a leader has to have a vision in this world. The Holy Prophet calls some of his companions. He calls 11 men and 4 women. Come here next to me. So they came. He said, I want you to leave Mecca. They said, what? He said, leave Mecca. Leave Mecca where? This is where our families are. He said, leave Mecca and go and live in Africa. Africa? Which part of Africa? He said, Abyssinia, modern day Ethiopia. They said to him, Ya Rasulullah, why? He said, they're attacking our Sahaba one by one. No one's going to remain alive to look after this message. Go to Africa and spread the message. The message is not an Arab message, it's a universal message. At that moment, those 11 and 4 women, they decided maybe it's time for us to leave. You had, for example, Zubair. You had Uthman ibn Mad'un, who Imam Ali named his son Uthman after, Uthman ibn Mad'un. You had, for example, amongst them Uthman ibn Affan, the 3rd Khalifa. They all left and they went to Abyssinia. When they left, the Arabs heard, the Quraysh heard that the Prophet has sent out his companions to Africa. So Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan caused an even more intense battle on the Prophet. More companions were being tortured, severely tortured. At this moment, the Prophet decided 11 men and 4 women is not enough. We have to send more out. So he called Jafar, son of Abu Talib. He called him. He said, Jafar? He said, yes. He said, you know how much I love you. I love you and I love your father. But there is a favor I need from you. And Jafar at the time, what was he? Jafar at the time was a young man, as in he was in his 20s. But the Holy Prophet, what was he showing? Let the young in their 20s spread Islam, this religion will remain alive. If you allow the youth to spread, the religion will remain alive. Sometimes in our communities, our youth are in the background of the community. But there are times where we need our youth at the front. 25 years of age, 26, Jafar, son of Abu Talib. He's there. The Holy Prophet says to him, Jafar, I want you to go to Abyssinia. He said to him, Ya Rasulullah, it will be my honor. What do you want me to do there? He said, I want you to settle there and spread the religion of Islam there. Here it is not safe. But this time I want you to take 83 men and 18 women. And you take all of them. Imagine Rasulullah sending 101 new Muslims to go to Africa. Because he could see in Mecca, if these 83 and 18 remain, they're going to be killed. Go to Africa and go and settle there. He looked at him and said, Ya Rasulullah, I don't mind settling there. But who's the man I have to meet for him to let me settle there? As in, you can't just enter a country without a passport. There's going to be immigration, and the immigration are going to ask you, excuse me, what are you doing here? So he said to him, there is a Christian priest who is a humble human being. Sometimes in this world, people from outside of our religion are more courteous than those within the religion, isn't it? The Quran on many occasions alludes to the Christian priests and their humility. And until today, amongst the most humble members of society are the priests of Christianity. Someone turns around and says, well, there's been this controversy and that. The fact remains, don't generalize on the whole of Christianity. There are Christian priests who are priests of honor and respect. Rasulullah said his name is Najashi, or his title, the emperor. You go to him, and when you go to him, all you have to do is simply explain the Quran to him. And he will know what is the message. And this is a message for all of us. Don't neglect the Quran. Know the Quran, because you'll be ambassadors of this religion with the Quran. Don't be people who've memorized the small surahs in the Quran and you don't have any knowledge of the longer surahs. He said to him, make sure you go. Jafar set off. They went by the ship. They went towards Africa, Red Sea, until they reached towards Ethiopia. When they reached Ethiopia, the news had reached Abu Sufyan in Quraysh, in Mecca. Abu Sufyan said, did you hear the news? He said, what? He said, Jafar, son of Abu Talib, leads a group of 83 men and 18 women to go towards Africa. How is it that they're allowed to go and settle there? So they said to him, Abu Sufyan, what should we do? He said, I'm going to send 2 of my best ambassadors. They're going to go with gifts to the Najashi in Ethiopia. And they're going to give him the best of gifts. We'll bribe the guy. You know, these men of God can be bribed. We'll bribe them and we'll look after the message. At this moment, what happened? At this moment, they said to him, who should we send? He said, send 2 men. Ammar ibn al-As. And number 2, Abdullah, son of Rabi'ah. Big is the question about Ammar ibn al-As. At that time, enemy of Rasulullah. Later, enemy of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I don't know when in Islam. He sends Ammar ibn al-As and Abdullah ibn Rabi'ah. And Ammar ibn al-As and Abdullah ibn Rabi'ah, they go with brilliant presents. Now someone's thinking, what do you mean brilliant presents? I'll show you in a second. Jafar al-Tayyar, he had reached there. When he had reached there, the narrations mention that the Najashi welcomed him. Who are you? He said, I'm Jafar, son of Abu Talib. Okay, welcome. What are you doing here? He said, I'm in a land where I've been oppressed. Our people have been oppressed. And they told us that you're a just human being. Do you mind giving us sanctuary? So he replied to him, there is no problem whatsoever. I'll give you sanctuary. Ammar ibn al-As, when he reached the Najashi, he came to the door. The soldiers at the door said to him, excuse me, what do you want? He said, I want to see the Christian emperor. They said to him, we're sorry, you know, he's very busy and he's already had people come in and he's welcomed them. He said, oh, he's busy, is he? He said, yes, he's busy. He said, are you guys also busy at the moment as soldiers? He said, yes, we don't allow anyone to enter. He said to them, have you seen these women who've come with me from Arabia? Have a look at them. So they're like, where? He said, these women behind me, have a look. They looked at these women. These men have never seen an Arab woman in their life. So they're looking at them, they're like, okay, I think he might be able to see you, you know, there's no problem whatsoever. He said, very well, woman, come here, please look after these soldiers, make sure you honor them. The soldiers, before you know it, have even left. And Ammar ibn al-As has entered upon the Najashi. Najashi looks at him, he says to him, what are you doing here? He said, I am Ammar ibn al-As. I have come to represent Mecca. I have heard that Jafar, son of Abu Talib, has come to Africa. He said, yes. He said, what's he doing in Africa? He said that he's been oppressed. He said they haven't been oppressed. They're taking people away from the religion of their forefathers. People in our town used to all worship properly. That man and his cousin are taking people away. People who used to honor what their fathers used to honor are not honoring them anymore. Of course, he makes the language very vague so that he doesn't mention that they're worshipping idols, knowing the Najashi would be angry. The Najashi, out of his justice, looks at him and he says to him, however, I have to hear Jafar when you are here. So I listen to both sides of the story. I've heard Jafar, I've heard you, but I want to hear both of you in front of each other. He said, very well. The next day they came. The Najashi looked at Jafar. He said, Jafar, Ammar ibn al-As complains that your people have taken his people from the religion of their forefathers. Is this what you've done? He said, yes. He said, but this is not acceptable. He said, oh Najashi, do you know what the religion of their forefathers is or no? Do you know what they do? He said, no. He said, we used to live in the worst ignorance. We used to bow down before that which was carved from wood. Until came a man who is from the line of the prophets of God. From the line of Adam, Abraham, Ishmael. He's from their line and he's come to us and he's spread the oneness of God. And he's the one who preaches the message of Jesus, son of Mary, and teaches the teachings of ethics and truth. We used to bury the daughters alive. We don't anymore. We used to be amongst those who used to be corrupt in business. We're not anymore. Amr ibn al-As looked, he said, Najashi, do not listen to him. Najashi said, no, no, no. What he says is true. If he says that his prophet is a man of God, then I want them to be honored. Amr ibn al-As didn't rest that night. The next day he went to Najashi, he said, ask him what he thinks about Jesus, because he knows our opinion about Jesus is different from the Najashi. So he said, ask him what he thinks about Jesus. When he went to ask Jafar, what's your opinion about Jesus? The reply was stunning, and a reply for each one of us in this hall today. If a Christian asks you, do you believe in Jesus or Mary? Reply to them with one answer. Chapter 19 of the Quran is named after the mother of Jesus. Isn't it? Chapter 19, a whole chapter. Would you believe there are certain Christians in the world today who believe that we don't like Mary, the mother of Jesus, and we don't believe she gave a virgin birth? We reply by saying, if we don't like Mary, then how comes Mary is mentioned more in the Quran than she's mentioned in the Bible? It's ironic that today the Pope, he made the announcement that the virgin birth of Mary is a historical truth in Christianity. Today, because his new book is going to come out about how the Virgin Mary's birth is a historical truth. It's his research. The birth of Jesus was a virgin birth from Mary. You find that when he said that, he said, recite to me the verses of Maryam. When he began reciting the verses, he began to recite, and then he got to the part that when Jesus spoke from the cradle, قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا. When he recited that, Amr ibn al-As said, yes, but they're saying he's a prophet of God. You say he's the son. At this moment, Najashi drew a line and he said, the difference between us and them is not more than this line which I draw. That's it. You see the justice of this man? This man could have easily been bigoted. He could have easily said, no, I'm a Christian, all of you people go to hell. No. His attitude was, how can I bring more people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The disease in Islam today, in some Muslim speakers, is how can I show that Islam is the best and everyone else is gonna burn in hell forever? Those types of speakers you'll always find a recluse, you know, the ones who's locked himself in a house, he hates the whole earth. These types of people, that's all they do. La'an on him, he's bad, he's deviant. La'an on him, deviant, la'na, curse, deviant. So Habibi, what's wrong with you? You were born in a microwave oven or something? As in, what's wrong? You got a heat furnace like this in your life? As in, this religion begins Bismillah ar-Rahman. In the name of the Lord who's merciful, not Bismillah Shadid al-Aqab, the Lord who's severe punisher. Where are we? At a school we want to send people to hell, or we want to send people to heaven? When a person came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said to him, I wonder how many people will go to hell from all of these sins. Imam Ali said, with a Lord that merciful, I'm surprised all of them don't go to heaven. That small line he drew, he said, Jafar, son of Abu Talib, and his Muslims will live here. I'll look after them. I'll honor them. You, Amr ibn al-As, can go back. Go back and take your teachings back towards Mecca. And it was in Africa that Jafar ibn Abu Talib established Islam. That's why if you ever have a quiz question, how did Islam reach Africa? The name of one man stands out. Jafar, son of Abu Talib. And who was the first Muslim child to be born in Africa? Abdullah, son of Jafar, who was the husband of who? Sayyida Zainab. Sayyida Zainab's husband, Abdullah, son of Jafar al-Tayyar, was the first Muslim to be born in Africa. His mother was who? What was the name of his mother? Asma bint Umays. This Asma bint Umays, nobody was like her and Fidda in their loyalty to Fatima al-Zahra. Nobody. And this lady, you know, her husband asked her a question which can happen to all marriages in this hall today and to anyone who's listening to me. Her husband said to her, would you come with me to Africa? It wasn't part of my marriage agreement that we're going to have to move to Africa. But the religion of Islam is bigger than our marriage. So would you come? She could have easily replied to him by saying, you never told me you wanted to travel, and why are you telling me about traveling, and why have you ruined my life, and why? That's the problem. As in some, if you give them 2 holidays a year, a nice car and a nice apartment, that's their dunya. You say, excuse me, what have you done for Islam? You, what have you done? Husband or wife, what have you done for the religion? Nothing. Asma looked at him, you know what she said? She said, if we go to Africa and Islam survives, then I'll come with you anywhere you want me to go. And it was his establishment in Africa that remains a sadaqah jariyah for him until today. What's the greatest number of Muslims in Africa? Where? Egypt, Nigeria, and then Ethiopia, isn't it? Ethiopia is the 3rd largest nation of Muslims in Africa. Egypt, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. Every Muslim who says, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, the thawab goes to Jafar and Asma. That's the meaning of sadaqah jariyah. That in life, a struggle you may take, you may go under the ground, but the struggle remains in your name forever. Every time, Ashhadu anna Muhammad. Not only that, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt began to marry women from Africa on the basis of Jafar. Imam al-Sadiq's wife, Imam al-Kadhim's wife, Imam al-Rada's wife, Imam al-Jawad's wife, Imam al-Hadi's wife, all of them are from where? Where are they from? Africa. In other words, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt were showing us when that man settled in Africa, Rasulullah had a vision that the people of Africa are humble people, honorable people. I want Islam to go and reach the people of Africa. He remained in Africa from what time? From the time he did hijrah, and this was the first hijrah in Islam. You know, sometimes someone says to you, you have to respect the muhajirun. You say, which muhajirun? Say the ones who went from Mecca to Medina. No, the first. The ones who went from Mecca to Africa. They're the first muhajirun. You find that he stayed there for how long? From the time he did hijrah. He stayed there for another 7 years. Then another 7 years later, until the battle of Khaybar. You see, what had happened was, Rasulullah had written a letter to the Najashi. The Najashi, while Jafar was there, Jafar ibn Abi Talib, you know what he did? He made the Najashi come towards Islam. You know, the Quran revealed the verse about the Najashi being a Muslim. Chapter 5, verse 82. وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبانا وأنهم لا يستكبرون وإذا سمعوا ما أنزل إلى الرسول ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق. You know what the Quran says? You will find the closest people to the Muslims are the Christians, because their priests and their monks are humble human beings. When they hear the words of Islam, their eyes overflow with tears because they've recognized the truth. When Jafar told him about Islam and he kept explaining to him, the priest said, you know what, I'd love to become a Muslim. And he told his whole tribe, whether you want to join me or not is up to you. I am joining the religion of that man in Mecca. I want to join the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why this man became a Muslim and recited the nikah of Rasulullah to Habiba, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Rasulullah, his wife, Habiba, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Habiba, when she joined Islam, had married Ubaydullah ibn Jahash. But this Ubaydullah ibn Jahash, when he reached Africa, he saw a beautiful Christian woman one day in Africa. When he saw her, she said to him, the only way you're going to join Islam, you're going to marry me, is if you leave Islam and become a Christian. He said, very well. He left Islam, became a Christian. She remained alone. The Holy Prophet knew Abu Sufyan would use this against Islam, saying, my daughter gets married in your religion and your men leave her. So the Prophet proposed to Habiba, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Who read the nikah for him? The Najashi, the emperor who had become a Muslim. Eventually later, the Prophet wrote a letter to the Najashi. What did he write? He wrote a letter saying, oh Najashi, I want you to send Jafar, son of Abu Talib, and his 3 sons. He had a son, Abdullah, married Sayyidah Zainab. A son, Aoun, married Kulthum. A son, Muhammad as well. He said, I want you to send them back towards Medina. They have served their time in Africa. Now allow them to come back. And you know, Jafar himself narrates, he says, for years, while I'm in Medina, we used to receive the letters. The Muslims have been attacked at the Battle of Badr. Ali ibn Abi Talib has destroyed them. The Muslims have been attacked at Uhud. Ali ibn Abi Talib has destroyed them. The Muslims have been attacked at Khandaq. Ali ibn Abi Talib has destroyed the opposition. So each time the opposition was destroyed by his brother, he's thinking, you know what, my brother's getting all of the accolades at the moment. I wish I could go back. Rasulullah brought him back. Do you know when the Holy Prophet brought him back? Just after Khaybar. Jafar had taken the journey from Africa. It takes quite a while in those days. The Prophet had returned from Khaybar. All the Muslims are victorious. Ali has annihilated the opposition. At this moment, the Prophet sees from a distance Jafar, and he makes the most beautiful statement made. He says, I do not know which one to be more happy with, the victory of Ali at Khaybar or the return from Abyssinia of Jafar. What a line. That shows you how much he loves those two. I don't know which one to be more happy with, Ali's victory at Khaybar or the return from Abyssinia of Jafar. Straight away he hugged Jafar, and they began to cry and cry. For years they haven't seen each other. Then he said, you know what, Jafar, I'm going to give you a present better than any present anyone can give you ever. Now Ahlul Bayt, when they give presents, we always imagine presents as some material thing. When Rasulullah told Fatima Zahra, I'll give you a present, what did he give her? The tasbih of Fatima, isn't it? It's always a spiritual present. He said, Ja'far, I'm going to give you a present which is the best present anyone can give you. He said, what is it? He said, I'm going to give you a salah, which if you recite it, all of your sins are forgiven. Salah Ja'far al-Tayyar. Many of us would have heard of Salah Ja'far al-Tayyar in our life. Even in many communities, I always mention this, in many communities, if someone's prayer goes a bit fast or goes a bit slow, just a bit slow, because you know, you find that if the prayer goes, for example, let's say 2.5 minutes, because that's too long now for Salah, all of a sudden people shout out, what are you doing? You praying Salah Ja'far al-Tayyar? Because the idea is Salah Ja'far al-Tayyar is a very long prayer, isn't it? Like you only have to recite Surah Al-Zilzal and Adiyat about 199 times. But he says to him, whoever recites this Salah, Allah will forgive all of his sins. And if he does it every day, Allah will ensure that on the day of judgment there is no sin on him whatsoever. This Salah Ja'far al-Tayyar, until today, many recite it. And until today it has helped many. It was in honor of Ja'far's return from Abyssinia that Rasulullah gave him this present. And that's why only a year later, the Holy Prophet had sent an ambassador when he was spreading Islam. He had sent an ambassador to where the narrations mention to us that straight after Khaybar, before he even sent that ambassador, when Ja'far returned to the mosque of the Prophet in Medina, Abu Hurairah narrates a very interesting hadith. Abu Hurairah says, we used to love Ja'far al-Tayyar. People said to him, why? Abu Hurairah used to sleep on the ledge by the Prophet's grave. Have you seen by the Prophet's grave, there's a suffa. They call them Ashab al-Suffa. The ledge, you normally see 2 men standing there, yes? Ledge by his grave, and there's normally 2 men standing there. That ledge, the companions who were poor used to sleep there. When they wanted food, they'd come to the ledge, they'd stay there until someone tells them, for example, like the Prophet, I'll give you some food, come here if you're hungry, come with me. Abu Hurairah says, we used to love Ja'far. Why? Because people knew how generous Ja'far was. You know, Abu al-Masakin, the father of the needy, anyone who's miskeen, he gives. So he says, what we used to do is we used to stay there, and we used to ask Ja'far a question, any question. Random question. Haji Ja'far, we want to ask you a question, for example. Oh, great Ja'far. He's like, go ahead. There's a question about, like a legal question. We're not sure if this is halal or haram. Whoever it was, he'll say to them, why don't you come home, have dinner, and we'll discuss it. Abu Hurairah says what we started doing, even if we didn't have a question, we just tell him we have a question because we know there's a big dinner at the end in his house. Sometimes that makes you wonder how people approach you as well on other things. So you find that Abu Hurairah says, Wallah, any issue that would come up, any issue, he would straight away say, listen, why are you asking me here? Let's go home and have dinner, and then we'll discuss. Abu Hurairah said, we'd go towards his house, and in the back of our head we think, we can't wait for his wife's food. And let him talk and talk and talk about the greatness of knowledge while we're munching and munching and munching. So, He used to be known for this attribute, for this trait. And that's why when Rasulullah sent an ambassador to the Romans to bring them towards Islam, the ambassador by the name of Harith, they ended up killing Harith. It was very unusual for the Prophet to send an ambassador and they kill him. Normally the ambassador was told, listen, we're not interested in Islam, go home. But this ambassador was killed. When Rasulullah heard his ambassador to the Romans was killed, the Prophet was very much aggrieved. And he said, I will not accept these people killing my ambassadors. I have sent a man with respect. I've gone to send them the message of Islam. Why do they behead him and kill him? Why don't they just send him home? He said, get the soldiers ready. These people are not people I'm going to sit back and watch, oppress others. So he said, who is ready to fight on this jihad? Jafar came to me and said, Ya Rasulullah, Badr was Ali, Uhud was Ali, Khandaq was Ali, Khaybar Ali. Please allow me, for I want to come near the taste of martyrdom. I want to taste martyrdom. The Holy Prophet said to him, Jafar, will you lead the army of 3,000 soldiers? He said to him, yes. Where's the battle? He said, in an area called Mu'tah in Jordan. Those of you who've done ziyarah of Ja'far al-Tayyar in Jordan, the area of Mu'tah, he said to him, that area, go towards there. You are in charge. If the banner falls from you, and you know the banner is important, isn't it? In Islam, when a person holds a banner, it shows that we're still strong. The moment the banner falls, then you know that you're in a predicament. As in any time a banner, which is the flag, as soon as the flag falls, then you know that if you're the leader of that army, you know now it's difficulty, because the backbone of your army is now broken. So he had the banner. When he had the banner, he said, if you fall, then Zayd takes the banner. If Zayd falls, then Abdullah ibn Rawaha takes the banner. They went, the Roman soldiers had 12,000. They had 3,000. I tell you, Abdullah ibn Umar narrates, I have never seen a performance in the battlefield like the performance of Jafar on that day. He said, and you notice that the sons of Abu Talib, when they're on a battlefield, they are the most ferocious warriors. He said he went through the Roman army. They were amazed at the prowess of this man as he was fighting. And you know how old he was on that day? 39, 40. Still young. 39, 40 years of age. He said he went through the Roman army one by one. And they recognized that a man like him, you can't fight one-on-one. A great soldier, you can't fight him one-on-one. And they detested him as well, because they could see he was piercing through the army. They surrounded him. He said they shot 53 arrows on his body. How many? 53. That when they collected his body later on, these Muslims are looking there like, what is this? It's like a hedgehog on the ground. 53 arrows on his body. But do you know, a great soldier, even if you keep piercing him with arrows, the main thing for him is to keep the banner high. Isn't it? You try and keep the banner high. Because if the banner is high, even though you've got arrows, then your fellow soldiers can still see the flag is up. He tried to keep the banner with his right hand. Someone came from behind and chopped his right hand. And then he tried to keep the banner with his left hand. And now these arrows are piercing more into him. Someone chopped the left hand. Now without hands, he was in a predicament. And he fell towards the ground. And they all come and began to attack him. In other words, he had his two hands. By the end of the battle, his two hands had gone from him. The Holy Prophet, what did he do? The Holy Prophet was in Medina. The Holy Prophet at Salat al-Fajr, some narrations mention, he said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The companion said to him, Ya Rasulullah, what's wrong? He said, I've just been informed that Ja'far, son of Abu Talib, has been killed. They said to him, Ya Rasulullah, how do you know? How do you know? He replied by saying, do not worry. When the report comes back, then you'll be able to verify that he was killed. Not only has he been killed, his hands have been chopped. Leave me now with Fatima al-Zahra, he said, because we want to go to the house of Asma to console her and her children. Do you know how hard it is for a lady to hear that her relative has had his hands cut? As in you say someone died naturally, it hurts you. But to hear that the hands have been cut, savagery. He entered. You know, Rasulullah does something beautiful. As soon as he enters, he sees Abdullah, son of Jafar, husband of Bibi Zainab at the time, was very young. He comes and he plays with his head, pats him. When later he's asked, why'd you pat? He said, for every hair of an orphan that you pat, Allah gives you light on the day of judgment. He patted Muhammad, he patted Aoun. At this moment, what happened? Asma walked in. Ya Rasulullah, what's the news? He said to her, Asma, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She began to cry. She said, Ya Rasulullah, where's Jafar? All of you know where I'm heading. Ya Rasulullah, where's Jafar? Because you know, she had remained loyal to him in Africa. So she traveled the world with him. It's difficult. It's really difficult to lose someone like that. He said to her, Asma, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. They killed him. She said, how? Oh Allah, give patience to al-Baneen when they told her how. He said to her, they cut the right and the left. And he had arrows surrounding his body. Arrows. So you know what Rasulullah did at this moment? She began to cry and cry. He said to her, do not worry. I have asked Fatima al-Zahra to cook food, and there should be a majlis for Jafar. Because many people ask me, why is it that we have majalis with food? Where is this from? This is from Jafar ibn Abu Talib when he was killed. That Rasulullah told Fatima al-Zahra, oh Fatima, go and cook. I say to him, Ya Rasulullah, who cooked for Fatima when she died? Who did the majlis for Fatima al-Zahra? The whole ummah had left Fatima. The ummah didn't even know where Fatima is buried. Even our seventh Imam had a son called Abbas. And that Abbas, the son of the seventh Imam, Imam said to him, make a majlis and give food. So Abbas said to him, oh my father, on whose honor do we give food in majalis? He said, Jafar, son of Abu Talib. Because Jafar, son of Abu Talib, when he died, Rasulullah said to Fatima al-Zahra, oh Fatima, go and cook and give out food to the whole nation in honor. This Asma, she remembered what Fatima did. She remembered what Fatima did. So you know what this Asma did? This Asma washed the body of Fatima when Fatima died. And this Asma is the one who says, I saw Ali ibn Abi Talib begin to wash her body, then he left her body. And he went in the corner of the room. I said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are the man who lifted the door of Khaybar, but I see you crying. I see you crying in the corner of the room. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why did you cry? He said, Asma, do not blame me. She said to him, what do you mean? He said, as I was washing her body, my hand came across her broken rib. My hand came across the rib. Rasulullah saw Asma crying and crying. He said to her, Asma, do not worry. Allah has replaced the hands of Jafar with wings. And that's why our fourth Imam says, Rahimallah Ammi al-Abbas. Allah has placed mercy on my uncle Abbas. He gave himself and his life away altruistically for Allah. And he lost his hands, but Allah replaced those hands with wings like he did for his uncle Jafar. What do we mean when we say wings? We don't literally mean wings. In heaven, the angels majestically have wings. If Allah replaces your hands with wings, what does it mean? It means that you are now as majestic and more than my angels in heaven. I see you as high as my angels. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib was devastated when he heard the news. He used to love his brother Jafar, and the worst feeling for Imam Ali was knowing that Jafar's hands were chopped. You know why? Because to Imam Ali, what was he thinking when he fell from the horse? Did he have hands in front of him? Because normally if you fall from a horse, your hands should be in front of you. But what if your hands have been chopped? It means you fall face down on the earth. May Allah give patience to Imam Sahib al-Zaman. What I'm about to narrate is the hardest narration. Wallah, all you have to see is that shrine at Karbala. How can you ever visit Husayn without going to Abbas first? You know, he loved his brother. He loved him. You will never in your life, you will never see a brother love his brother like this. It's a reciprocal love which is unique. Abbas loved Husayn and Husayn loved Abbas. From a young age, when Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib was writing his will before he died, and Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, what do the narrations mention? The narrations mention that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was dying, he called Imam al-Hassan. He said, Imam Hassan, come next to me. So Imam Hassan came next to him, then he said, Aba Abdullah, come here. Imam al-Hussein came. He said, Aba Abdullah, you have to look after Imam al-Hassan. Zainab, come here. She came, look after Imam al-Hassan. Kulthum, come here. She came, look after Imam al-Hassan. One by one, al-Baneen came to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. She said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, all of them you gave them a wasiyah. Abbas is crying. Ya Abu Fadl. Ya Abu Fadl, don't cry. All of them you gave a wasiyah except Abu Fadl. He said to her, no, I have a different wasiyah for him. Bring him to me. And you see him coming as a young man to his father. His father looked at him and said, Abbas, all of them I've told them to look after Hassan. I want you to look after Husayn. I want you to look after Husayn. I say to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I wish you had seen what he gave away. He kept on begging Abu Abdullah. He said, Ya Abu Abdullah, let me fight, please. Please let me fight, I beg you. I can't take seeing them doing this to you. You know, Abu Abdullah, he wanted to show him one thing. He wanted to tell him, Abbas, your major battle isn't them. Your major battle is if you can get to that water and not drink it. That was why he doesn't allow him to fight. He wants him to know there's a bigger battle, the nafs. So he keeps telling him, let me fight, let me fight. And you know the moments that hurt him a lot, there were two moments. The first moment that hurt him a lot was when Shimon said, where's the sons of al-Baneen, my cousin? I want to protect them. Let them come out, I'll look after them. He wanted to go out and attack him. He wanted to attack him, Abu Abdullah, because Abu Abdullah is such a noble human being. Abu Abdullah said, Abbas, wait, he's your cousin. Show respect. I know that he's the worst of the worst, but show respect. But the second thing that hurt him was the one that made Abu Abdullah let him go. He said to him, Ya Abu Abdullah, I hear Sukayna saying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Abu Abdullah looked at him, he said to him, okay, Abbas, you hear her saying Al-Atash? She said, yes. He said, bring her some water. Bring her some water, O Abbas. And you know Abu Fadl, you ask him, he never ever lets you down. in his life and after he's passed away. Those of you who've tried asking him, does he ever let you down? Those of you who've tried asking al-Baneen, has she ever let you down? You know what al-Baneen says after Karbala? This al-Baneen, amazing, amazing. She says, Wallah, if you gave me the whole heavens and the earth, and you gave me 70 Abbas, I'll swap all of them to see Husayn's head. What a mother. Why al-Baneen? She said, because Fatima wasn't there, I have to look after Fatima's son. When he went out towards the Furat, the narrations mention as he went out towards the Furat, there were already a number of soldiers by the Furat. He managed to get through those soldiers. They knew this was Abbas, not someone you can fight. He then got to the water of the Furat. When he got to the water, as soon as he picked up the water, he felt the coolness of the Furat. And anyone else would have drunk. But you know what he said? How can I drink the coolness of this water while my brother drinks the syrup of death? He rode back, and you all know what I'm about to describe to you. May Allah take your heart to Karbala. May Allah return you to that shrine. As he was about to return, he had ridden his horse. He's now holding the water. He could see Sukaina and Ruqayya from the distance. He could see his beloved sister Zainab. He could see her as he is now riding his horse, confidently that he's about to return. A man came and struck the right hand of Abu Fadl. A man came and struck the right hand of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He tried to hold on to the flag in the other hand. When he tried to hold on to the flag in his left hand, all of a sudden a man came and struck the left hand of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He now was trying to hold the water and the flag on his chest because he could hear the tears of the children of Abi Abdullah. At this moment, Harmala bin Kahil, Harmala was standing next to Umar bin Sa'ad. Umar bin Sa'ad said to him, Harmala, what are you waiting for? Can't you see the right eye of Abbas? He said, yes, I can. He said, strike your arrow on the right eye. All of a sudden, an arrow pierced the right eye of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Ayatollah al-Nayini was reciting a majlis in Karbala. When he recited the majlis, he got home. He wanted to sleep that night. In the middle of his sleep, he says, I saw in my dream Fatima al-Zahra. He said, when I saw her, she was crying and crying. I said to her, oh Fatima, have I made a mistake in my majlis? She said, no. He said, then why do you cry? She said, oh Ayatollah al-Nayini, I want you that whenever you recite the Masaib of my son Abu Fadl al-Abbas, I want you to tell the people that normally when someone falls from his horse, he falls with his hands in front of him. Oh Ayatollah al-Nayini, my son died, Abbas, and fell on the ground without any hands in front of him. When he fell on the ground, one of them came, he struck him with a bar on his head. Now he's alone on the ground. It's at this moment, for the first time in his life, for the first time he says, Akhi, Aba Abdullah. Never had he said Akhi, he had always said Sayyidi. Always he used to say, my master Husayn. The only time he ever said Akhi was this moment. He said, my brother, help me. Abu Abdullah rode his horse. Imam al-Husayn, he began to ride his horse. When the horse was walking, it stopped. When it stopped, the Imam got off. He saw the right hand on the ground. Imam continued on his horse. Then when he continued, the horse stopped again. Then he saw the left hand of his brother on the ground. Now when he got closer to Abu Fadl, these soldiers saw Imam al-Husayn. They began to run away. He looked at them, he said, you run away now, where are you running? When you've killed the son of my father, you've broken my back. He got closer to his brother. He could see his brother in his last moments. May Allah never show you a day where you see your brother in this much pain. Your younger brother, your older brother. He got near him. Now brothers and sisters, I want you to hear this. this. Abu Fadl al-Abbas couldn't see because there was blood on his eyes. He couldn't hear because that bar struck him so hard that he couldn't hear. So he knew there was someone around him. He couldn't see or hear them, but he knew someone's coming. So he called out, I beg you, don't strike me. I beg you, don't strike me. Put my body on that camel. I know my brother will come and collect me. When Imam al-Husayn came, how did Abbas know it was Husayn? He can't hear Husayn. He can't see Husayn. The moment he felt the kiss of Husayn, he knew it was Husayn. There was the softest kiss. He knew, that's my brother. And Imam al-Husayn looks at him, he says, oh Abbas, now my back has been broken, oh Abbas. But you know, this is the ultimate altruistic human being. As soon as Imam al-Husayn took Abbas's head in his lap, Abbas removed his head from the lap of Husayn. Why aren't you comfortable? Why don't you stay on your brother's lap? He knew that Imam al-Husayn could hear him, even though he couldn't hear Imam al-Husayn. He said to him, Aba Abdullah, you place me on your lap, but in a few moments who will take your head and place it on their lap? I say to him, oh Abu Fadl, I wish you had seen when Shimr sat on the chest of your brother. But then the second thing that he did, that's the one that hurts. Imam al-Husayn wanted to carry Abu Fadl back to the tent. He looked towards him. Of course he can't see him, but he just said, Abu Abdullah, I beg you, leave me here. He said to him, why? He said, I've never let down Sukaina. I've never let down my sister Zainab. But now I'm going to let them down. I'm going to leave you with this final story. In Iraq a few years ago, there was a young man who was crippled, who was sitting by the grave of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. May Allah allow you to sit by that grave. The man was crippled in his feet and he was a cripple in his hands. He was sitting by the grave of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. He says, on this night, I saw everyone doing matam of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Everyone was beating their chest. He said, but you know, my hands are crippled. I can't bring them that close together. He said, but I wished I could have. He said, at that moment, I saw a young man with the most beautiful face. He said, he came towards me. He looked at me. He said, young man, why don't you stand up? He said, because my feet are crippled. He looked at me and said, stand, try standing now. He said, I stood up for the first time. I had never stood up before in my life. He said, at this moment, the man looked at me and said, so why don't you beat your chest? He said, because I'm crippled. He said, wallah, if I had hands, I'd give them to you. But they took my hands away from me on the 10th of Muharram. MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
हो चुके बेकासिमा